Hi, this video is looking at prohibition against so-called illegal drugs, okay, which that's what prohibition is. It's criminalising something. Now the thing is, when you criminalise something that people use, and especially something that's highly addictive, then you are creating a criminal market, okay? You are actually inviting and perpetuating crime, as was shown with the drugs war, with the alcohol prohibition in America. So here we have an article in The Guardian about how prohibition backfired and gave America an era of gangsters and speakeasies, which it did, and it actually created massive police corruption as well, because police are human beings, they drink alcohol as well. So obviously you're going to get backhanders, you're going to get gangs fighting over territory and illegal dens. And so what did America do? Because all hell broke loose in America, basically. You saw a sudden rise of some very seriously corrupted psychologies, disturbed and abused psychologies, getting rich in this criminal world. And obviously, where you're talking about crime, young people were being recruited to take part in it all. It was just crazy. And so they stopped it, didn't they? But they didn't, because they'd created then this criminal group. And so it's like, alright, well, we're going to, now we've created this criminal group and empowered you all with money and status and followers. We're just going to remove the prohibition of alcohol and put it onto all the substances people had started using very heavily the minute we banned alcohol. Now there is a problem with alcoholism in the world, and especially among native peoples, because that's the thing with addiction, is that generally happy, stable people might use alcohol now and again, but they're not alcoholics, they don't become alcoholics. But unhappy, oppressed, persecuted people, people who are suffering severe problems in life, even very rich people who've suffered abuse, say, through their boarding school, which we know abuse was rampant in those places, they're going to become alcoholics because they've got a problem and society isn't dealing with the problem. Especially people who've suffered abuse as a child are very highly likely to turn to alcohol. Okay? So alcoholism is directly related, and all the addictions, people who become seriously addicted, are usually people that are suffering from emotional problems, emotional and psychological and physical abuse and oppression and degradation. Now in the Daily Mail here you can see this, they covered this article because, you know, there's the banning Aboriginal people from drinking alcohol. Okay, that's how they're trying to tackle it in America, in Australia, because the native peoples are that oppressed. They've been robbed of their culture, their history, their lands, and have been made to feel alienated in the world that's been built by the invaders. A world that judges them inferior human beings, that whole society is established on strength of the judgment that the native peoples of Australia are inferior human beings. So what are they going to do? Because they can't get their hands on the natural plants and drugs that they would have used, the natural medicines, okay? So no, instead they turn to alcohol, don't they? So, you know, the way to deal with that problem isn't to raise those people up, to give an official apology and to respect those people. Oh, no, no, no. Just ban them from drinking alcohol. Because this is the kind of thing that is going on. We're living in craziness. It's a crazy, crazy, mad world. Now, before Prohibition in Britain, which it was illegal to sell these drugs, that, you know, the only way people could get them was through their GP on prescription. And people were, and it was largely the upper classes that were using these drugs, going to the doctors and getting heroin. The working classes didn't use these drugs. There wasn't a massive drug problem in Britain. Now, I'm not saying we should go back to making them prescribed, no. I believe that what we need to do is to end prohibition. We need to end it. Because it's creating more problems than it's solving. It's actually creating criminals. It's creating an arena of crime that does include child abuse, human trafficking, child trafficking. They're totally interrelated. Illegal drugs and child abuse are totally connected. Okay? And, you know, when we look at it, the links between drugs and crime, you know. I mean, here, the annual costs imposed on society by daily heroin users totalled about $55,000 per offender. In Britain, you know, you can find somebody with a bit of powder on them or a bit of illegal plant material on them, and next minute they're in jail. You know, that costs the British public £40,000, on average £40,000 a year per inmate in a prison. Okay, so for the sake of having a bit of powder in somebody's pocket, a bit of powder that has cost all kinds of crimes in order just for them to get that bit of powder, then the public has to pay again. We've already paid in the policing, the courts, the lawyers, okay, and then on top of all that, how much did that cost? And then on top of all that, 40,000 to lock them up. And is that going to stop them from being an addict? Is that going to stop them from, as soon as they get out? I mean, do people really believe that the amount of drugs that are in this country right now have all been smuggled in people's suitcases and shoes and what have you? No, because it encourages corruption all the way up the line when you've got very poorly paid, overworked customs officials, police, you name it. Oh, here you go, wad of cash. You just have to look the other way when this person comes through. You just have to look the other way when this boat comes in. It's causing corruption at a massive scale. You know, and then we've got the kind of people who impose these laws upon us are actually using drugs themselves. You know, this is his senior advisor, George Osborne, senior advisor. Crack cocaine. He's a crack cocaine addict. We've all seen the video in Parliament of George Osborne absolutely tripping his head off. But you see, that's the situation that we are in. Okay, look, the comments. Nine locations tested positive for cocaine. So, you know, we know our MPs are on it. We know that the financial world is on it. Too many bankers. They're all on cocaine. Cocaine is a psychopathic drug. It just cuts empathy. It boosts the ego and cuts empathy. Cuts the rationale. Because our compassion is part of our rationale, isn't it? Oh, apparently not. No. Rationality is totally on the side of psychopathy, isn't it? No, it isn't. The psychopath has their own rationality that often is outside the law because it does not include compassion. And a compassionate world includes these child protection directives to protect children and prevent crimes against them. They do work like a legal machine, but our police haven't got time or the resources actually to implement these because, you know, they're all too busy responding to tip-offs about drugs and arresting drugs criminals and having the powers to break into people's homes on a tip-off. But apparently a child's crime report isn't a tip-off. A child's crime report can just be brushed aside as false. And, you know, the fact of it is that children are being targeted. Okay? Gangs recruiting children young as 12. Well, this isn't news. They've been doing... That's what they do. They know that children are less suspected and they can't get the same prison sentences as adults, but also they know that they need to target these young children, not just to deal drugs, but to take them themselves, and they know very well that who are they going to go to? Their friends at school. Because if you're going to have an illegal substance and a criminal world that's entirely dependent on the profits from that illegal substance, then they are going to need to create addicts, aren't they? And they can't do it by putting an advertisement on national TV, can they? So what are they going to do? They're going to target the kids. The kids are going to take the drugs into the schools, into the colleges, into the universities, into their circles. They're going to create addicts. And there you've got the next market. Now, the thing is that if drugs were decriminalised and sold legally, then quality would be a lot better, because at the moment we know for a fact these drugs are being cut with all kinds of substances, and a lot of them dangerous, and that is having a massive impact on our health service, having to treat people who suffered ill effects from drugs that they've taken that have been further intoxicated with other dangerous drugs, other dangerous products. The whole thing is destroying our society from within. It's destroying our humanity. And, you know, we know for a fact that all these Asian drugs gangs, okay, were supplying a service. Because they're not... Because they were abusing children. And here we are, you know. I mean, you know, as I've said previously, this so-called excuse, you know, reason that the police and our authorities have given, that, oh no, we didn't dare arrest them because we were all scared of being called racist. That's a load of rubbish. They chose these people because these people do have access abroad to where the illegal drugs are grown, in Afghanistan and through Pakistan and other places. These weren't being protected because people were scared of being called racist. They were being protected because they were providing a service. Where do you think that the people like sorry, I've got the wrong one up there. The people like him were getting their drugs from? Where did they get the drugs from? They can't go out and buy them, can they? But, you know, they're not just providing drugs, are they? They're providing children as well. And as I say, you know, here we go. In the House of Commons, and then we've got Patrick Rock. He was the senior advisor to David Cameron. So we've got George Osborne, Chancellor of the Exchequer. Chancellor of the Exchequer! His senior advisor is using crack cocaine. Okay? And then we've got our Prime Minister of the time, David Cameron, this guy, he'd made him head of policy-making decisions, head of the policy-making decision cabinet. That's what he was. Cameron's senior advisor of 20 years. Apparently, Cameron's fixer. And he got found with child abuse, porn, and even making it as well. And he did get convicted, though he was allowed to walk free because apparently the scandal alone was punishment enough for him. And, you know, it isn't that we need to punish these people, really, is it? Because what's punishment going to do? Is that going to stop him from wanting children? No, it isn't. These people need to be put in gated communities, in therapy centres. We need to find out what we can do, because we're talking about a socio-psychosexual disease, and it is spreading. It's been left to fester and fester for decades upon decades upon decades. We know from the historical crimes that all those historical child abusers operating in care homes, in all our authorities, they were allowed to get away with their crimes. Who do you think they recruited into other positions of authority? Of course, they recruit more criminals like themselves, because then that strengthens the group and it allows them to commit crimes with impunity. So they will make sure that, you know, people in key positions have power in order to turn a blind eye, to protect people like him. And it does make you wonder, why did he suddenly get targeted? How did it come out? Because obviously somebody somewhere, a decent person who couldn't be touched or blackmailed or bribed, had noticed something. And it's amazing that even after this came out, because look, this was in 2014, okay, and where is it? This was in 2015, February, before the general election. And yet, they still get back in power. How could that happen? How can a society vote into power, actually vote into to rule them? People they know are criminal. That, you know, they're best friends with crack smokers and people who enjoy child pornography. What is going on? What is going on? It is totally crazy. We can't protect our children. A children's crime report can be just brushed aside. Because you know what British children are getting right now? They're getting an abomination of the Child Protection Directives. That's justice for children in Britain. An abomination of the Child Protection Directives. And you'll hear, I'm sick of hearing the MPs and people going on about, oh, crimes against children and the latest horror story that comes out. Oh, isn't it terrible what happened to this child? What happened to this woman? Oh, isn't it terrible? Isn't it terrible? Well, it's no good just, you know, that is when you're getting into the arena of truth junkies, you know, addicted to truth porn. Because if you're not going to do anything about it and you're just going to avidly read the latest child abuse story, then what are you dealing with? It has become truth porn for truth junkies. You know, that's what the child abuse arena is now creating. People are making money out of that. They're making money out of informing people about the horrors of child abuse. But they're not promoting a solution. Oh, I wonder why. Filthy financiers and dirty money. Illegal drugs are funding a global criminal networks on a global scale. and the amount of bribery and blackmail that's going on in high places all around this issue of drugs and the provision of children. We're all suffering from it. Our whole society, it's undermining our whole society. Follow drug supply chains to corrupt banks and financiers. And it's true. You know, how many businesses are actually true, real businesses right now that aren't just covers, money laundering fronts? And the thing is that when you start being able to legally sell the drugs, then that makes profits for people, doesn't it? It makes legitimate profits for people. When police don't have to spend all the time operating on tip-offs about drugs and getting involved in that horrible, violent world, that does put police at risk. Everybody that has to deal with them, it puts them at risk. The health workers, especially the police. And, you know, and like I say, it means that police end up being corrupt, because you only need to have one heavy, a corrupt heavy in a police force, and then that person can put pressure on other police, you know, because they're right in the thick of it, aren't they? Right, yeah, you're going to turn a blind eye to this, because I tell you now, you've got family, haven't you? It's that easy, and it is happening. But if police didn't have to do all of this, then they would be free to totally focus on protecting the next generation, because the children are our future. But society is pouring billions. Human society is pouring billions, if not trillions, into the war on drugs. And buying the drugs that are then even more expensive because they're prohibited. And then people are committing crimes to get the money to pay for the very expensive drug habits. And then they need to infect more people with that drug habit. And, you know, we know that these gangs are using drugs to procure children. That is what they're doing. And it explains it here. You know, they were told to use taken out because it's just too easy for them, isn't it? I knew if we wanted drugs or alcohol, we would have to do something. Because, you know, what these people were doing, they go to impoverished areas where, you know, most of the parents are oppressed and depressed. They can't provide for the children. No money in this world. It's a boring world. There's nowhere to go. You can't buy the nice clothes. The whole of society's telling you you're shit. And then all of a sudden these guys turn up with a nice posh car and they're saying, oh, come with us, and they take you to a party and they're all very nice to you, and drugs and alcohol freely available. Yeah, you can come round, and yeah, we're going to drive up here today, and oh, you can come to Newcastle for the day with us if you like. Yeah. Of course, kids want to see the world. Oh, we're going down to Cornwall. Do you want to come to Cornwall with us for the day? Probably on a drugs run. And then next minute, they've got the kids addicted to drugs. They don't even tell them that they're giving them drugs. They'll put it in the drinks they're giving to them. Here, have this can. All the kid knows is it starts to get needing to be with oh, I feel nice when I'm with these people. Don't really understand why, but I feel nice when I'm with these people. Suddenly they've got a drug addiction, and then they can be used and abused in every way. And you know, this is why I'm making this video, to explain to people what is going on. And it does have an impact on everything, on everything. You know, like for example, in Sheffield, our council has handed over a private contract to manage Sheffield trees, which is supposed to be looking after them and, you know, cutting down any diseased trees and lopping branches that might threaten to fall off and fall on a car or a passerby. But oh no, no, no. These people, now they've got the contract, they're just cutting down hundreds of Sheffield trees. Hundreds of them. I think by the time they're done, they want to get rid of something like 75% of Sheffield trees. Now, Sheffield is known as a city of trees. And every tree gives oxygen for 4 people, right? Every tree provides oxygen for 4 people. And it absorbs massive amounts of carbon dioxide, CO2, from the air. So Sheffield trees are not only are they providing a service en masse to Sheffield people. So if you cut 400 trees down and you think each one of those trees were providing oxygen to somebody and absorbing massive amounts of carbon out of our atmosphere, so that's improving people's respiratory systems, because we know that heavy CO2 laden cities do cause severe respiratory problems in humans. So Sheffield's trees were performing a service to us, providing oxygen, removing CO2 from the atmosphere, and at the same time providing food for bees and other wildlife, because tree pollen is a massive food source for bees, especially in springtime. And here we are. Trees are an incredibly important source of food for bees and other pollinators, in part due to their large size. You know, so our bees are under attack right now. They're under attack from pesticides, other chemicals. We know that Wi-Fi has a very serious impact on bees as well, and is accounting for bees unable to relocate the hive. The wild bee population is suffering terribly, and you see, the way bees operate, because there are certain flowers at certain times of the year, and they rely on the trees when they come into blossom, and they'll collect all that pollen and then they store it, don't they? That's what bees do. They store, they get the food while it's there, like we do. Harvest, store, and then use. But once those trees have gone, how many bees then are left with no food supply? But that's okay, because we're fucking crazy, aren't we? We don't care about our planet. We don't even care about our children. We don't care. All we care about, all this world is operating on, is sex, drugs, money and power. Those are the 4 directives. Well, sorry, no, they've got to stop. We need child protection directives. Stop this madness, this insanity of drug prohibition. It needs to stop. Stand up for your rights, people. Stand up for your rights to be sane. Because this drugs prohibition is causing too much crime and it's causing too much suffering. And you know, one of the main reasons why I've stayed away from illegal drugs is because of the horror that's associated with them, and I don't know what my money is funding, and I don't know what's in them. It's a dangerous arena. But just saying to people, oh, it's dangerous, dangerous, that's not educating people about drugs. You go to the shop, you buy a packet of paracetamol, they're deadly, okay? even a small overdose of them can kill quite a lot of people, are very susceptible. But there's instructions on the back, isn't it? It explains that, you know, you don't take more than 2 in 4 hours. People are trusted. If you're going to buy drugs that can be lethal, well, you get them. It has a warning on it, doesn't it? And it explains how much you can use safely. So then that cuts down all the other shit that's been burdening our health service. It frees our police to do a job that gives them job satisfaction, that doesn't put the police themselves at risk of being enticed and coerced and bribed and blackmailed into crime. And pay them a bloody decent wage as well. Because if this country has got billions to spend on drug addicts and drug users and drug dealers, then it can spend all that money on providing jobs to people who educate the public about how to use drugs and what they're used for and how they affect us, so that we can make informed choices. So that we're not making our children a prey to criminals who need to push their drugs. Because this is what we've got now. The whole world has become gangland, hasn't it? Gangland planet Earth. That is what is happening. And our children are being abused in gangs and groups. And we do need to stop it. You know, and these are 10 compelling reasons to end drug prohibition today. And here they all are. We need to stop harming the developing world. We all have a right to decide what to put on our bodies. The mechanisms of drug prohibition are inherently discriminatory. And it's true, because it's not the George Osbornes of this world that end up in prison for drugs and having their homes searched, is it? We all have a basic right to adequate health services. Prohibition means no quality controls, misinformation, social judgments caused by prohibition. And it's again, you know, that the average junkie is some impoverished criminal mind, when actually, look to the top. Prohibition erodes ever more human and civil rights. We're wasting human resources. Of course it is. Of course it is. If prohibition was not empowering the most horrific, terrible criminals, then it wouldn't exist. And nature is suffering as a direct result because of the mad people that end up getting put in power. You know, I mean, they gave the contract of Sheffield Trees to a corporation that had been convicted of corporate manslaughter. Oh, but it's all right. It's all right for a corporation that's going to have control of our city resources. It's all right for them to have a previous conviction of criminal manslaughter. What is going on? Madness is ruling, okay? And when you've got that kind of madness in power, expect austerity. Expect to lose your NHS. Expect to be taxed to death. Expect to be even lose the right to own your own home because they've been priced out of your range. And expect instead to be paying extortionate rents. Expect to lose everything you have got. And as I say, once we have removed the criminal drugs scene and legalised it, decriminalised it, at that point things can start to get a whole heap better. At that point, we've got the resources, time and ability to thoroughly investigate every child's crime report in exactly the same way that police respond to tip-offs. A child's crime report is a tip-off. And we need to use this legal machine now to remove as many of these people we can, and especially the ones in authority, to arrest them, to investigate them, to rescue children, because for every child abuser that gets arrested and taken out of the society, that means prevention of crimes against children. You know, and as I say, we know that all these guys that, you know, they were saying, oh, we can't arrest them because we didn't want to appear to be racist. We know that's a load of rubbish. They were providing a service of drugs and children to people in high places. That's the fact of it. Our whole society is at risk. So it's our choice now. What are we going to do? Are we going to stick with prohibition? Or are we going to protect our children and prevent crimes against them? Which is it to be? That's the choice that we have. And we need to stand up for it. It's the only way we're going to get rid of the madness, because we have a right to live with intelligence and our common sense that the common law upholds. Because this isn't any common sense that we're dealing with. We're dealing with absolute madness, and drugs crimes have increased, and the drug addictions have increased, and we've still got the alcoholism with it as well. And in fact, it's alcohol that's the gateway drug to all the other drugs. Because when people have been plied with alcohol, they're more likely to say, oh yeah, go on then, I'll try a bit of that powder. Yeah, give me that pill. And one of the reasons why cocaine and speed as well, amphetamine, are so popular is because they do mean that people can drink more and stay lucid. You know, as I say, I don't take them myself, but I know that I've watched the effects that it has on people. I've seen how people are. Because so many people are using them. And it's too easy to bribe and blackmail people in power with drugs and get them to say, yeah, we'll hand over this contract to these people. So, you know, because all they're interested in, Amy, is making money out of the wood, aren't they? Because it's like, oh yeah, go and help yourselves to the Woodstock of Sheffield. Go and cut down an avenue of trees that was planted in honour of the men of World War One. I mistakenly said World War Two in a previous video, but it was World War One. Whole avenue of trees. Nothing wrong with them. How many bees are going to starve now? Oh, but like I say, we don't need to think about the bees. We don't need to think about the children, because all we need to think about is sex, drugs, power and money, isn't it? No. Empower yourself. Stand up for the children. Please protect the next generation, because this socio-psychosexual disease is destroying our society. It's destroying our very humanity. As is the prohibition against drugs. Because now we do have gangland America all over the world, don't we? That is where we are at now, isn't it? That is the whole of planet Earth. And we need to do it. We need to do it. Stand up for your rights. Stand up for your rights to be a human being that is capable of being educated, making your own educated decisions. Understand once and for all that prohibition is serving criminals. It's a criminal law created by criminals to serve criminals, and it is abusing our children, and it is putting our children at risk. Protect the children and prevent crimes against them. Stand up for your rights. I'm sick to death of witnessing people telling horror story after horror story about this child abuse, that child abuse, oh, this is what happened here, satanic abuse, oh, isn't it terrible, and nobody talking about the solutions. And when it comes to that all we're getting is people actually making money out of informing people about child abuse, but never promoting any solution, never questioning the status quo. So what we're dealing with then is truth porn and truth junkies. And that's what they've turned it in. They've turned the whole issue of child abuse, and even especially the worst kinds of sadistic child abuse that fall under the heading satanic. But who is Satan? What is Satan if not a criminal, fictitious God created by criminals that fully endorses what they do? And as I say, they've turned it into an arena of truth porn for truth junkies. And with even other abusers getting ideas and learning about more how to abuse children, about how easy it is. And, oh yeah, because look, if you're a child abuser, well, you're more likely to get rich and powerful in this world. It's your green card to wealth and power. If we get any tip-offs, we will make sure that the witnesses are silenced. And here you are. You know, this is from the Marantha Report, which I've shared before in my videos. From it was in relation to Satanist ritual abuse of children, and it was submitted to the Children's Commissioner in their inquiry into child sexual exploitation in gangs and groups. And the Marantha community are a very well established, but you know, not very commonly heard of, but they do a lot of work, and they have influenced Parliament in trying to protect children in Britain. Now, this is what they have to say, you know, specifically in relation to the kind of people that are involved in serious child abuse. You know, satanist ritual perpetrator groups are composed of individuals who often have professional jobs in the police, legal and social services and local authority. Satanist groups also frequently include members who are Freemasons. There is a deliberate intent to have members in different spheres of influence in order to maximise the security of the group and to gain social respectability for individual participating members. Many groups have extensions of their own member networks to those in other parts of the nation and even other nations, which increases their capacity to control victims. So this is what we're up against. And it's a waste of time, you know, harping on about the horrors of it all. Be aware of the horrors of it all enough to stand up for your rights to implement the solution. Stand up for your rights to abandon the problem. Because the law against drugs, prohibition against drugs, is a problem. So we need to abandon that problem because it's a self-created problem. And all we need to do is decriminalise the whole drug scene and start paying all our attention to protecting children and preventing crimes against them. Otherwise, you know, we're always going to have this problem of blackmail and bribery going right to the very top, and who then is going to be invited into the very top positions of power in Britain? Obviously, criminals who need their drug supply, and they will do anything. We know that. We know that a drug addict will go and rob their own family. They'll even abuse their own children to get money. to buy drugs. Because child abuse itself is an industry that does earn profits for people. And what are they doing with them profits? Because they need vast sums of money to buy vast supplies of drugs. It is just crazy. We need to stop the crazy. Stop it. Stop it now. Stand up for your rights, people. Demand an end to this prohibition that is destroying our society, preying on our children in every way possible, and costing us, the public, in public funds, absorbing billions of public funds. The police haven't got time to go investigating who's took your car, who's done this to your child. No, because they're all too busy on the drugs crack, aren't they? And it has to stop. Stop the madness. Stop it now, please.